Hey there, welcome back to my channel and to today's video. I'm playing with a brand new palette in my collection. I got it at the very end of 2024 and it is something that I've been looking forward to for quite some time, so I'm so excited that I finally picked it up. I'm also going to be chatting today about multichromes and specifically the problems with multichromes. Perhaps you remember, as I've talked about my Haunted palette from Gourmand Girls, that there was another palette from the brand which I really wanted. I really like their Nightshade palette, but I thought that once I owned Haunted, Nightshade was a little bit too close. The one that I really wanted and have wanted from the beginning was their Spooked palette. This is one that I think it came earlier in the process. I believe Nightshade and the others came afterwards, but this has been such a viral palette, and every time I looked at it, I would think, oh, that's like a really great color story. I don't mind the theming, it's not my favorite, but whatever. But the color story is so, it's like workable and safe, but then it has these really interesting pops that make it totally wild. And I think that that's a fun combination. A friend of mine on Instagram, she uses this palette often, and I swear every time she does, I'm just shocked. Like, wow, you got that from the Spooked palette? So I found this for $15 on MERCARI the other day. I was so excited because I never see them that low. And the reason it was 15 is because the black is broken, but that really doesn't bother me. It's broken in a way that, I'll show a close up on the screen, but it didn't explode or destroy the palette. It was just that shade. Totally fine. So I'm excited to play with this palette today and talk to you guys about multichromes, because I've been thinking about multichromes a lot lately, but I don't have a ton of time to film, so let me just get going and chat while I do this. I'm priming my eyes with the Glamlight Icing Primer. This is the shade Buttercream. Everything I'm using is linked in the description box. I don't know why multichromes came to mind when I was looking at this palette, because this one I don't think has any multichromes, but I don't know. It just sprung to mind and I thought I'd chat about it today. I want today's eye look to be kind of warm. A little smoky maybe. I'm going to start off with the shade Spellbound. No, I think I'm going to build light to dark. So I'll start with Haunted and just wisp that through my crease. Did I say Spellbound? It's Spellbook. Okay, that is way more red than I was expecting it to be. This is Haunted, and let me just blend it out and then see if I can cover it a little bit. Okay, multichromes. I remember watching the, I think, November ranking from Rachel Palmieri, her palette ranking, and she mentioned about the Ensley Rain Groovy Garden palette, now into Spellbook. Let's see if I can get rid of some of this redness. And I've heard other people say this as well. I think Angelica Nyquist said it, and probably 2 or 3 other content creators whom I saw talking about Groovy Garden. They said that the palette was beautiful, but they wish that the shimmers in the center, because there were like, I think 5 multichromes in the center of the palette, something like that. It seems like most of those shimmers flip green. Like they might have a different base or a different visible color, what you expect it to be, but then it shifts green. And there were not really green mattes in the palette, and so they didn't really think that they got a lot of variety because the multichromes all felt like they were almost the same. That might be what sparked this idea for me, but I was just thinking, and I've said this from the very beginning, initially I didn't really care for multichromes. The biggest reason being that I felt like you didn't know what you were gonna get, because it might look blue in the palette, but then when you put it on your eyes, all of a sudden it's purple and green. And depending on what mattes you use, that could be a good thing or it could not. Now, to be fair, if all of the colors are in one palette, let's deepen a little bit with Fright, the deep purple. If all those colors are in one palette, then it's probably going to be fine. But what if you were trying to match your blue shirt and now you've got purple and green shimmer on your lid and it maybe doesn't work at all with your shirt depending on the tones and the shades? Do you know what I mean? I felt like multichromes were sneaky and slightly deceptive. Also, my other qualm with them at the beginning, when multichromes were first, becoming trendy, at the beginning, most of them seemed to be so black-based, and I really didn't like those. I still don't actually, for the most part, because I don't care for dark shimmers. I'm thinking specifically, for example, the Nomad Royal Europe palette. When Nomad first came out with multichromes, everybody was agog. I get that they were beautiful, and they really were, but they were so dark. I never use a shimmer that dark on my whole lid unless I'm doing quite a smoky eye, and that's it. I mean, I might put a tiny bit over here towards the darker half of the lid, but generally I'm not going to lay that everywhere. I'm gonna deepen this a little bit more with the spooky shade, which is the black. And now I'm excited to say that Multichromes have come kind of a long way. And the ones that I prefer are very light. They're still shifting, still different colors, but they're light. I mean, that's certainly more appealing to me personally, but it still doesn't really resolve the issue of what you see is not what you're gonna get. And maybe this is why so many people swatch. If you're swatching your Multichromes, that's what you're basing your choices off of, instead of, here's what I see on the palette, it should match what I've laid down foundationally and hope for the best. Do you know what I mean? Is that making any sense? I hope that's making sense. I wish that this were a little bit more orange on me. That Haunted shade had quite a red undertone, and it threw me off. But it's fine, it's pretty. It's just, it's not going the direction I expected it to go, but that's all right. It'll be nice nonetheless. Let's play with Shimmer. I want to take the shade Spirit here. Yeah. And kind of lay that everywhere. I want it to be a little bit drier, so I'm using my finger and just tapping and not spraying it with on a brush or anything. Okay, another problem with Multichromes is that they really do need to be displayed on a lot of real estate. That's why they look so good when you see swatches online. You know what I mean? Like those finger swatches where somebody takes a shadow and they just cover their fingers with the shadow and they go like this. That's the best way, or one of the best ways, to display them. Specifically, a large swatch, a lot of real estate, maybe the whole hand, or like a finger swatch down the whole forearm. This way you can see all of the shifts in a shade. You don't get that on the eye. The eye is simply not big enough to really showcase all of the different colors in a shadow. It might give you a little whisper of each color as you turn your head or something, but it's not going to give you a really good display. Again, you might go into a multichrome thinking, oh, this is going to transform the look completely, and then you lay it down and you're like, there's just not a lot of space. Now, I will say, to be fair, sometimes I see an eye look and the person will take a picture or take the video and you can see these huge shifts, like purple and then bam, it's green, and then all of a sudden it's rose gold and you're like, oh, wow. So sometimes it can be displayed nicely on the eye, but I think it really has to take up the whole space. It's not just a little bit. And that's how I feel about multi-chrome eyeliners. I almost feel like, what's the point? You're literally an eyeliner. You're getting a line and it's thin and it's subtle and it's not, or with a waterline. Nobody's gonna see the multichromatic aspects on your waterline. It's just not, it's such a tiny area. It's not flat where people can see the color head on because it's the waterline, so it's like this. They're cool and they look great in swatches, but when you're actually using them, how useful are they? How dynamic, how striking? Okay, I think this is looking beautiful. I feel like I want to do something different over here and something different here. So what would be different? I'm quite drawn to this pumpkin shade, but I don't know that that's different enough, and it's not bright enough for an inner corner highlight. So maybe I'll play with this and that. The person who sold this to me never even touched this one here. Did they? Oh no, I might see a little, like a finger swatch. Anyway, let's go into Treat. All right, Treat, I'm gonna start with a fluffier blending brush. Not really fluffy, just a little bit. I don't want it to go everywhere. I just wanna kinda lay it down softly. Another problem with multichromes is that they are expensive. They're expensive to formulate, they're expensive to source. And that means that the cost has to be passed down to the consumer. So multichromes being added into palettes jacks up the price of the palettes. Now there are some brands that are notorious for doing this. If you think about Glaminatrix and Ensley Rain, the reason their palettes are so expensive is because of the multichromes. I'm not saying anything bad about their quality. I have one Ensley Rain palette and the quality is incredible. But that palette is like $72 and I won it in a giveaway because I wouldn't be able to pay $72 for a palette. But the point is, it's so expensive because of all the special shades. And the special shades are gorgeous, but how, like especially in that palette, for example, how different are they really? And again, when you consider things like the real estate that you've got to display these multi-chrome shades, how many different looks are you going to get? If a lot of them are kind of cool toned mauve base, and then maybe one shifts gold, one might shift rose gold and then pink, one might shift teal into turquoise, like you're still starting off with the same foundational color with a few variants. Maybe we could have pared down the palette, and instead of having, I don't remember the number, but say instead of having 12 multichromes, you've got 4 multichromes. And then Ensley Rain's other shimmers are also gorgeous. Then give us some more, okay, this is definitely a teal or turquoise shimmer. This is definitely a rose gold shimmer, but you've got the multichromes in there for a little bit of fun and flair, but you could probably bring the price of the palette down significantly. More people would be able to experience and have fun, talk up the brand, and still say, hey, this brand has great shadows, great multichromes, but you can just broaden your consumer base because it's something that more people can afford. This is a Singe E01 into the white shade, which is called Ghoul. Glaminatrix has great color stories and really neat undertones, but again, very multi-chrome heavy palettes, so the price of the palettes is quite high. I understand that they're more a luxury brand, a luxury indie, if you will, but I think that they are narrowing their customer base because of the price point. And if we didn't have quite as many special shades, particularly if those special shades are not really that different, and that leads me into my next point. If we didn't have quite as many, more people would be able to afford the palettes. And the final thought is, yes, are the special shades really that different? I don't see a huge variety within them. And when I see people who specialize in swatching the shifty shades, like Seeking Shift or Bad to the Brow, these people compare Cleona and Divina and Sugar Drizzle and I can't think of the other brands, but all these fancy multi-chrome brands, and they can show you a swatch from all, 5 or 6 different brands, and they're all the same color. So how unique are they really? There are only so many color combinations you can come up with. You have to work within limitations of formula and factories and what's available. And again, the price point, because maybe a brand wants to do something wild and crazy, but they can't afford it, or they know that their customers won't be able to afford it, so they don't do it. I think that's another definitely lowest on the list kind of limitation. But people who do have a lot of special shades in their collections are starting to find that there are a lot of duplicates as well. Okay, I have to say I really love this look. I wanted something that was more orangey warm to contrast with my black shirt, but then bringing in the purple was just interesting. And honestly, the first color I used wasn't quite as orange as I thought it would be, so that changed things up a bit too. But I think it's pretty, and the quality of the Spooked palette is exactly what I expected it to be. It's beautiful. The Gourmand Girls formula is really, really, really good. Let me tell you what I did to finish off. In my waterline, I put a dark purple from ColourPop, sort of a true royal purple. I think it's called Champs, but the lettering has all worn off. On my lips, I'm wearing this liner from Italia Deluxe, 1065 Terracotta, and the glowing lip from ColourPop in the shade Desert Aura. And I've had those on my whole video. I have the NYX, what is it? Lift and Snatch Brow Tint Pen, because the other day I was plucking my eyebrows and I realized that there were a couple of silver hairs in my eyebrows, and I was thinking, oh dear. It's so funny because the silver hair in my head doesn't bother me at all, and I'm not bothered by these silver hair in my eyebrows. I just wasn't expecting it, at least so soon. In my late 30s, I wasn't expecting for my eyebrows to start going white, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe I'll just have 1 or 2 for the next 15 years, and then I can start getting white eyebrows. On my face, I have the Unearthly blush, the Spring Magic blush palette. I used these 2 orange shades, and then I topped it with this from Nomad, which was some time ago, I believe. They call it a light infusion powder. It's the Positano Sunrise. I initially used it as a highlighter until I realized that it was way too dark for me, so I now use it as a glowy blush, and I put that on top. So that's what's going on in my cheeks. It's generally quite a light application, and that's the way I like it. So that's everything. That's everything. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments, of course, per usual. Do tell me what you think of the eyeshadow look. I think it's really pretty. Tonight is actually, the day that I'm filming is New Year's Eve. So this is my New Year's Eve look, technically. It's not nearly as glitz and glam as you might think. And besides that, I would love to hear what you think about Multichromes. I mean, today's whole video was chatting about multichromes and the problems that I see with them. On the whole, I like multichromes. I tend to prefer from certain brands over others. For example, I think Unearthly has a gorgeous formula, and their multichromes are so nice. They're lightweight, they're sparkly, they are shifting, but they're not really heavy. They don't have the black base. I like the Urenzai multichromes, but they do tend to hard pan on me. I don't know how many other brands I've tried multichromes from, but they are becoming more prevalent in the indie communities. So you do see more brands that are including multichromes in their palettes. And again, we're talking about price point and real estate and all the things that I mentioned in today's video. Do you have a brand that gives you beautiful multichromes that you love? How do you feel about multichromes? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Do you have other qualms with them that I haven't even mentioned today? Or do you have a counter list that can show me, you know, all the bullet points of what's great about multichromes? Because I really do want to talk to you about this. I appreciate you so much for being here, for taking the time out of your day and clicking on my channel at all. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Perhaps you'll consider liking and subscribing if you want to see more, and I will chat with you guys in my next video. Bye!